Good evening, everyone. This is Cathexis. Once again, I'm back with Quantum Eraser, and we're going to be doing another presentation. But tonight, we're going to be doing a pretty important topic that we don't hear a lot of people talking about, which is going to be gravity. And we're going to try to determine what the mainstream has been, well, really says about it, and which one they claim is true, and really what to think about what they show us, because there's a lot of really interesting contradictions that we're going to go over. How you doing tonight, John?
Doing fine, sir.
That's good. That's good, man. But really, I don't got much to say. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. Let me go ahead and present your screen, and hope everybody out there is doing well in the audience. I appreciate you guys showing up. And I presented you. Let me stop screen sharing. Looks like we should be good. All right. So yeah, let's get right into it.
All right. For gravity, we always hear that this is the answer. And, much of the topics that we bring up, it's a one-word savior. So first of all, we're not questioning whether anvils fall to the earth when dropped from skyscrapers. We're questioning the mechanism or the cause. Also, this isn't a personal attack on either gentleman. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Einstein and Newton. I'm just going to be refuting their claims. And with Newton, some of those are alleged claims, and I'll show that here in a few minutes. This isn't a judgment. I'm in no position to make such a determination. And with Newton, it's documented that he wrote more on the book of Daniel and Revelation than he did on physics. So let's get into it. And this is what I usually start out with. If somebody says gravity, well, these are my first questions. Which gravity? Einsteinian or Newtonian? Is gravity a force? Is gravity a scientific law or scientific theory? And what is the cause of gravity? There's been no one's really answered these questions. I've got all kind of answers, really. Like, what does it matter? That's my favorite one. It kind of matters a lot because Newtonian gravity is a force, whereas Einsteinian gravity is not a force. They're mutually exclusive. They're not even in the same geometry. Newtonian gravity is in Euclidean 3 space, and Einsteinian gravity is pseudo-Riemannian 4 space. So let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and pummel both. We'll start with Newtonian gravity. And my first shot across the bow comes from George Musser in Scientific American. He says Einstein created his general theory of relativity, which provides our modern understanding of gravity. With the express purpose of expunging non-locality from physics, Isaac Newton's gravity acted at a distance as if by magic, and general relativity snapped the wand in two by showing that the curvature of space-time and not an invisible force gives rise to gravitational attraction. So really, I could stop right here, because according to the article above, what position does the scientific community exclusively follow? I'll give you a couple minutes to answer that question. All right, that's enough. It's B. They follow Einsteinian gravity. So why then are we even talking about Newtonian gravity? I don't know. I get challenged with Newtonian gravity all the time. I'm sitting there, why am I even talking about it? I mean, the people that they follow don't follow Newtonian gravity. So what's up with that? I don't know. Okay, each of these that I'm going to bring up uh, refutes each gentleman's position by themselves. I can stop after each one of these. So back to Professor Shankar, the chair of physics at Yale. All right. So today we're going to shoot down Newtonian mechanics. Now, somebody please explain to me what shoot down means. You know, we're like the press. We build somebody up only to destroy them. I don't know. It's not sounding too good right there. The next minute, in the same block of instruction, he goes, first, I want to tell you what goes wrong with Newtonian mechanics. The double slit experiment is a problem. That's what puts the nail in the coffin for Newtonian physics. So, I don't know. Somebody needs to explain to me what nail in the coffin means. It doesn't sound too good. I'm not going to smell any better. And again, from Professor Shankar, the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. You don't have separate laws for big and small things. The real question is, how do the very same laws, when applied to big things, by big things I mean the things you see in daily life, give the impression that the world is Newtonian? It's only giving the impression. So it's not looking too good for Newton up to now. So, and why is that? He said the double slit experiment. Well, he was referring to this. So we have a double slit experiment with a Newtonian particle, an electron. We close one slit and fire a bevy of electrons, and we get 10 hits at point A. Then we close that slit and open the other slit and fire another bevy of electrons, and we get 8 hits at point A. Well, the Newtonian prediction would be, if we fired the same bevy of electrons with both slits open, we must get 18 hits at point A. Well, what do we get? We get a big fat 0. And what does that mean? Well, that is the end of Newtonian physics. So what does this statement mean? What is Professor Shankar telling us here? Is this a read between the lines situation? Let me leave this up there for a couple seconds. Take a drink. Let this soak in. And you tell me if I'm misinterpreting this statement right here. Any objections? I didn't think so. That's pretty cut and dry. So next, number 2. Apparently, Newton himself wasn't all that enamored or married to the idea. In a letter to Dr. Richard Bentley on February 25th, 1692, Isaac Newton says this: "'Tis inconceivable that inanimate brute matter should, without mediation of something else, which is not material, operate upon and affect other matter without mutual contact. That gravity should be innate, essential to matter, so that one body can act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without mediation of anything else, by and through which their action or force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into."
That's my favorite quote out of all
so
those.
I don't know if you're bringing up Newtonian mechanics. Newton himself is questioning your mental faculties with this. That's what it's saying to me. I could be misinterpreting, though. So next, this is another good one. Is gravity a scientific law or a scientific theory? Now, if you go back to my presentation on scientific laws and scientific theories, you know how to differentiate and distinct between the two. So, from Richard Feynman, The Character of the Physical Law, this right here, I would recommend. This is a great read. Right? It's a little long, so we'll see in a few weeks. But I would recommend anyone that's interested in physics to go ahead and read through this probably 10 times. But like with anything, you know, you chew on the meat and you spit out the bones. And here's one of the bones. There is no model of the theory of gravitation today other than the mathematical form. Now, you know that this is in my wheelhouse. It's got model. I'm not even going to talk about that. The theory of gravitation, the mathematical form. Now, you can't have a mathematical scientific theory. This is tantamount to having theory of Mary bachelors. Why? Well, mathematics at best, like I've said in the past, can only describe. But scientific theories, you know, the real ones, they explain. There's a big difference between descriptions and explanations. So how does that work, Richard? So if it's not a scientific theory, then it has to be a scientific law. But we already read before from Professor Schenker that the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws. So since all the laws of physics are always quantum mechanical laws, please show the law of gravity in quantum mechanics. You'd have better chances resurrecting Alexander the Great's horse. Next. So we all know what this is. This is gravity right here, right? I don't know. What would it be for, like, if I put, what is a banana? What would that equation look like? That's a player here. But guess what? You see this equation right here? That isn't Newton's equation. This is Newton's equation. So the force of gravity is not equal in anything. According to Newton, the force of gravity is proportional. So that's what I was saying about alleged claims. So in B, please validate G by experiment. Cite the source. Remember, during the cosmic microwave background presentation, I said that validated by experiment, it's impossible to extract a signal that's 1,000 times or 10 to the third times weaker than the noise. Well, there's a problem because the electromagnetic force is 10 to the 38. That's the noise. And the signal? This is 1. So I don't know how anyone can reconcile this. The electromagnetic force is 10 to the 38 times stronger than that of alleged gravity. And there is no way to factor that out. There was no way. That is, to get the signal gravity through the noise, the electromagnetic force. Again, validated by experiment, there's absolutely no way to extract that signal that's 1,000 times weaker than the noise. The electromagnetic force is the noise, and it's somewhat a little more than 1,000 times stronger than the signal. It's this number. I can't even say this. I don't even know what this number is. It's kind of big. And moreover, especially when said noise, the electromagnetic force, is capable of producing the same effect, attraction. The electromagnetic force, a fundamental force in nature. The electromagnetic force acts between charged particles and is the combination of all electrical and magnetic forces. The electromagnetic force can be what? Attractive or repulsive. From hyperphysics, the electromagnetic force is a force of infinite range which obeys the inverse square law and is of the same form as the gravity force. So this noise is impossible to extract the signal from. This one right here, 10 to the third. But Cavendish in 1798 isolated, then pulled the attraction signal from the background noise, 10 to the 38, with the accuracy 10 to the minus 11th. I don't think so. If you do, I have this bridge. It's right beside pristine beachfront property I forged from iron and copper ores after I exposed it to my Illudium Q36 explosive space modulator, which turned into a solid Illudium gold. It's for sale right now. I have to sell it quick. Are you interested? If there's any takers, Cathexis, go ahead
Yeah,
and let me know if there's
yeah, I
any
don't see any.
in the chat. I didn't post a price here. We
I
could
think
talk.
there might actually be one taker here. His name's
Really?
Yeah, his name's Charlie. We'll get to that
Okay.
later.
All right. So back to the equation again. This is a begging the question fallacy on so many levels. We already went over a couple. Let's choose another one. Where did he get that R radius from? From the librarian? Even granting, for the sake of argument, the yarn that spun concerning our librarian, and that's Eratosthenes, he and or his storytellers patently assume the sun's size and distance from the earth, among others. That is, he never had a viable independent variable. That equals no scientific hypothesis. That equals no experiment. That equals not science. End of story. Here's another end. Moreover, we must summarily dismiss the yarn as an utter fraud because the librarian never ever performed the alleged experiment to begin with. Eratosthenes' methods and measures do not come from Eratosthenes himself. The accounts of this method come to us from Strabo, Pliny the Elder, and especially from Cleomedes, who is believed to have lived between 200 and 100 BC, although he could have lived as recent as 300 AD. The only detailed account is from Cleomedes, in particular, chapter 10 of his On the Circular Motions of Celestial Bodies. And that's where everything of our modern understanding of Eratosthenes' exploits are molded from. Emphasis on mold. And that's where Cleomedes unwittingly seals Eratosthenes and this entire Justo story's fate. From this source right here, I'm going to keep it hidden for now. The reference to Eratosthenes comes mainly from Strabo, Pliny, and Cleomedes, like I said above. And here we will firstly repeat those testaments of Pliny and Cleomedes so that the reader has the information at hand. And then we will proceed to open a whole 24-ounce can of whoop that tail to show why it is in reality false that Eratosthenes was the first to know this method of calculating the Earth's circumference, and that it is also false to say that he conducted an experiment based on the method itself. As we will see, the astronomical calculation itself shows that according to Eratosthenes' information, that's copied from Cleomedes and Strabo, it is impossible that he carried out an actual scientific experiment according to the method described. So I'm going to leave this with Cathexis. We're going to be dealing with this particular subject on a future video.
Yeah, we'll be doing a whole episode on the Eratosthenes situation. I think it's just brilliant, back engineering of information personally, but there's certainly their little story.
He was the librarian at the Library of Alexandria. Mm-hmm. He had access to from the stories of the Library of Alexandria, it was, I don't think mammoth is the right word. I mean, it was supposed to hold a metric ton of documents from antiquity, especially of the Egyptians. Now, he got involved in a little cross matches with some other people, because I learned of Eratosthenes long before his exploits with the circumference of the Earth. I ran into him when I was looking at the timing for the Egyptian dynasties back many years ago. That's the first time I ran into that name. But I don't want to go down this road. We're going to be dealing with this at a future episode. All I want to say that these people right here in this document show without a doubt that this was a fiasco of epic proportions.
Yeah, it seems more like a I don't know, an origin story type situation. You know, it lends credence to the whole ball Earth. I mean, it's one of their major proofs. It's hilarious if you look at anybody who's like, duh, some guy named Aristophanes figured out the circumference, 2,000 years ago. Yeah.
I never heard anyone mention this guy's name right here. Cleomedes.
No, these other
now, I heard of these guys, Pliny the Elder and the Younger, and Strabo. I've heard of them. This guy I never heard of, personally.
Yeah. The story is definitely dubious.
Everything, all the details come from him. Nothing from Eratosthenes. Nothing. Zero.
Yeah.
Everything from this guy.
Stories about stories about stories.
So we'll get to that here in a few weeks. Sure. So we're back to the equation again. So every mythomathematician knows prima facie that every term in an equation must be rigidly defined. It looks like there's a whole lot of mass in that equation above, doesn't it? That's so to me. From John Wheeler and Edwin Taylor, from Space-Time Physics. Nature does not offer us any concept as the amount of matter. History has struck down every proposal to define such a term. Even if we could count the number of atoms or by any other counting method, try to evaluate the amount of matter, that number would not equal mass. So, you can't even define it. Let's move on. Martin Rees, Astronomer Royale. What causes gravity and mass? These questions still baffle all of us. Well, wait a second. Richard Feynman just said above that there was a theory of gravitation. Well, what do actual scientific theories provide? We all know this. The cause. This isn't marrying up. If they don't know what this, define a boondoggle gaggle. You define this, then we can define this up here. Also, following Professor Feynman's declaration that it's all mythomathematical, right? If all you have is the mathematical form supporting that it's gravity, so 5 minus 3, right? That equals 2. How do you know it's not? And I could just make stuff up. Ducal Slopegerts. That's 6 minus 4. Well, that's giving me 2. Kenichu Fuckelsloms. I'm getting 2 with that one. How about Wiggly Tiggly Skirts? I'm getting 2 with that one too. Ad infinitum. They could be actually at play in lieu of gravity, couldn't they? All we got is the
your math's solid right there, John. I just double checked it.
What's that?
Your math, it's solid. I just double checked.
Oh yeah, it is solid, isn't it? I have my daughter. She helped me with that. She kind of liked this one. I showed it to her when I first came up with it. She got it right away. And finally, back to the 4 fundamental forces, or the strengths of these gas. Or better said, the relative strength. So if you can take a look at these, right? You got the strong nuclear electromagnetic force that we talked about before, the weak nuclear, and you got gravity. All right? This is like just a token. Let's give it something here, right? That's what it looks like. Just first blush. Well, let's just give it something here. We'll just give it one. What do you suppose the force of a gentle breeze is? Would you say it could eclipse gravity? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. So, gravity rules the fairy tale planets, moons, stars, galaxies, universe. Eh? So, I root for the underdog all the time also, but this fiasco is a tear-jerking belly laugher. I'm not rooting for this one. He's going to lose. So much for Newtonian gravity, or better said, Newtonian anything. So who's next on the docket? So Einstein. Well, let's take him to the woodshed. This is going to be pretty easy. This Huckleberry's quantum mechanics. So Einstein's theory of general relativity is, say it with me now, incompatible with quantum mechanics. There's no guessing here, and they're not saying it might be or maybe. It's incompatible. From David Bohm, Einstein's buddy right here. They had a lot of conversations. One could see that relativity and quantum mechanics, the two most fundamental theories of matter, really contradict each other. In the sense that relativity is local, it's causal, it's determined. It's continuous, and quantum mechanics is just the opposite. So is there any leeway here? Is it almost contradicted? Or is it all the way contradicted?
No. You see what they're saying.
Looks like to me it's a contradiction. They're both contradictions. So, like I said before, the laws of physics always quantum mechanical laws. So, here's from these above. Here's the Einsteinian follower syllogism. Premise 1. Einstein gravity gives rise to gravitation, not Newtonian, or the invisible force gravity. Premise 2. Einstein gravity is contradictory and incompatible with quantum mechanics. Premise 3. All physical laws are quantum mechanical laws. The conclusion that they must arrive to, therefore, Einstein's relativity is true. And you can see my guy here. It's really much worse than that. But we could stop right here, but where's the fun in that? So relativity, special relativity and general relativity, via different mechanisms, speed versus gravity, can dilate, bend, and warp time. I mean, this is one of the main claims of each of their theories. And I put that in quotes. They're not theories, not scientific theories anyway. Okay, from the primary school falsification, this is one of my favorite falsifications right here. So, see if you can follow me with this. Time is a conceptual relationship between two motions. Specifically, it's based on an alleged single rotation of the Earth on its axis in respect to the sun, a day. It's a concept. It isn't physical. It's without chemical formula or structure, no dimensionality or orthogonality, no direction, or location. You can't put some time in a jar and paint it red. I mean, come on now, let's reason together. You can't dilate, bend, or warp non-physical concepts. Is it your contention that if you have poison ivy on the brain, you could scratch it by thinking of sandpaper? Freedom is a concept also. Can you bend that for us? Dilate some freedom for us. It's preposterous on its face. That which you are using to measure isn't the thing that you're measuring. A football field is 100 yards long, but a football field isn't the yardsticks. If I bend the yardstick, does the football field bend also? In the analogy up here, the yardsticks are analog to the clock. The football field is analog to time. This makes no sense. So if something, say, affects cesium atomic clocks, or any modern clock for that matter, does that then ipso facto mean that the Earth's alleged rotation in relation to the sun is affected? These two mytho-mathematical fairy tales, special relativity and general relativity, were falsified 30 seconds after their respective publications by third graders at recess, for goodness sakes. In total, each are massive reification fallacies on nuclear steroids. All right, here's the grown-up falsification. Non-locality. Now, we've talked about this, I don't know, 3 or 4 times already. So we'll just go over this real quick. So because of this well-established phenomena in 1935, which pummeled Einstein's fairy tales, GR and SR, Einstein coined the phrase spooky action at a distance. Then he and his buddies conjured a thought experiment. That's the EPR paradox in 1935. It's Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen in a feeble, clumsy attempt to debunk quantum mechanics. Why? Well, he couldn't have anything traveling faster than the speed of light because his theories would implode. A side note with this, he never published in physical review letters again because he didn't appreciate the paper being peer reviewed. He has a little pretentiousness problem. Because of the seemingly impossibility of testing his thought experiment, it apparently covered his pretentious, pompous, pseudoscience, mythomathematical philosophers' butt, and the very public argument between he and Niels Bohr, who was of the opposite position, was relegated to the dustbin of history, never to be reconciled. But then, in the 1960s, John Bell explored Einstein's alleged paradoxical thought experiment and proposed an inequality. It's called Bell's inequality. If it was shown to be false, Einstein and his theories would take a dirt nap. Then John Clauser, a frustrated grad student because of his poor grades in quantum mechanics, was rustling through some books and papers in the campus library when he came across John Bell's paper. And that, as they say, folks, is history. Bell's inequality was first violated in 1972 by John Clauser and Stuart Freeman. Then in 1982, Elena Spey jacked it yard forever. Ergo, Einstein and his theories equal dirt now. He got debunked. Ever since a Spey's falsification, non-locality has been confirmed by experiment roughly 1,875 times without exception. Now, we've already went over a lot of these experiments. We got the Groblacher experiment in 2007. The ones that New Scientists and Physics World commented on. We have Manning experiment in Nature Physics, and that was in 2015. I'm not going to go over these experiments. We talked about these in previous videos. We also talked about the quantum erasure with the causally disconnected choice from PNOS. And the delayed choice quantum eraser can also be powered. I could power a metric ton of experiments in here. So let's just get to the rub. Therefore, there are two doors that can be breached per the results of all these experiments. Door number one, information. However they conjured that, go back to my information presentation. This is a fiasco right here. But anyway, information, however they conjured that, can travel faster than the speed of light. That means Einstein's theories are done. Kablooey. Or your second choice, door number two, space and time are mere illusions. We already showed that the other day when we were talking about the quantum erasure experiment. That is, Einstein's theories are kablooey again. Take your pick. Einstein himself, after 30 years of attempting a unified field theory, finally reckoned with it prior to his death and was partial to the latter door, as am I. This is a letter from Einstein to his buddy again, David Bohm. I must confess that I was not able to find a way to explain the atomistic character of nature. My opinion is, if that the objective description through the field as an elementary concept is not possible, then one has to find a possibility to avoid the continuum together with space and time altogether. But I have not the slightest idea what kind of elementary concepts could be used in such a theory. So he finally realized it after all those years. Again, we're back to non-locality and the quantum Randy challenge that we already went over about 10 times. The quantum Randy challenge, henceforth the QRC, challenges any pseudoscientist You, as it were, who claims that quantum physics is not true and that quantum entanglement experiments can be explained by a classically realistic and locally causal model. All right, this has been posted for a while now. 2012, there's been no takers. You're getting a Nobel Prize and $1 million. So don't come back here to me and try to refute it. Go get your Nobel and your $1 million. You can post in the side chat if you get a chance, or email Cathexis on your application for your Nobel. So, in conclusion, for both Newton and Einstein, the fat lady has sung herself skinny. It's over. So, a big add-on here. This is something to ponder in your alone time. So, for entanglement and non-locality. So you got entangled particles, photons or electrons. They can be separated by massive distances, and their states are correlated with each other. That is to say, if I measure one, I will immediately, instantaneously affect the other. And or, if one of the entangled particles interacts with another atom or particle on either of their respective trips, no matter the distance, thus destroying the original entanglement, the other's QM state is instantaneously affected. This is slam dunk. This is absolutely true, based on countless repeated experimental tests, without exception. So you know what I like to do? I always run home to mama with these things. I always like this one. Contingent necessary facts. You guys, I know I love these. For this to be true, for this up here to be true, all this with entanglement, for this to be true, and it is most assuredly, therefore, guess what the contingent necessary fact of the matter must be so as to afford this condition? Each of those entangled particles must know the quantum states of each and every other single particle in the universe at all times, continuously, instantaneously. But particles don't know anything. To know something, you have to be alive. Particles don't know anything. Particles don't create, contain, communicate, send any information. If you're confused about that, head back to the information presentation. It'll tighten your shot groove back there. From Dr. James Gates, buried deep inside the equations for supersymmetry are codes. They're error correcting codes. Specifically, he found Hamming block codes. And if you know anything about Richard Hamming, he was the pioneer of computer science. You can go chase that down by yourself. He's got some interesting views on Einstein too. My speculation, long before I heard of Dr. Gates, underneath the Planck length at 10 to the 30 minus 35 centimeter, or 10 to the 35 meters, and between the pixels, that's the quanta of this reality, there are codes, equations running based on algorithms that reconcile each and all possible outcomes to preserve universal consistency instantaneously. This is unimaginable, incomprehensible design. So the recurring question, who creates codes and equations and algorithms? Information, who does that? Who's the programmer, folks? So I want to add one of Cathexis's disclaimers here. We're almost done. This is a short block of instruction here, but he's not responsible for this. So Max Planck, during his acceptance speech, 1918, for his Nobel Prize, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to a vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. So, from John 1:1-3, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. See a correlation with this? Jesus Christ is the Word. Therefore, Jesus Christ is the Creator. It wasn't just a man that was brutally tortured and executed. It was the Creator himself. And he did so willingly. Why did he do that? The answer to that question will set you free. The largest escrow closing in the history of the universe is at the door, folks. Where do you stand? Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
All right, John, I appreciate that. That's a lot of really good information in there, especially those quotes. I mean, for these guys to be, who they were, I mean, these are very important names. And to be saying these things so explicitly, I just find it shocking that we don't have this particular conversation happening on any large scale.
It's quite surprising, right?
It is. I mean, doing the research for this week, I found, there's like certain small groups of physicists against Einstein's relativity, and, groups of people who have these discussions. And I can only imagine these conversations are having, they're happening behind closed doors with certain groups of physicists. But, when you go through this whole process of indoctrination and you're a true believer in the Einsteinian relativity, it's hard to deprogram yourself. I imagine that it's very difficult. There's people who are listening to this right now who are absolutely freaking out. One in particular out there, because he said that
I'm sorry about that.
He called it the Einsteinian truth, is what he called it.
Well, okay, well, let's have him come on here. He needs to show personally how he can bend non-physical concepts. I want to see that. I want a YouTube video. Because we don't really have to get with physicists. We can go to third graders. He's done. So.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to see that. I mean, there's a practicality to understanding, okay, things fall down. Great.
Sure.
Okay, they fall down at this particular speed. This is repeatable, measurable. This is what real physics is about. But as even Newton said, that it's an absurd idea to think that inert matter is attracting each other. So they still don't have this answer. Gravity is real only in the context that there is something happening. Things do fall.
Yes, that's not the question. We want the mechanism, we want the cause.
Yeah. And they don't. And that's why I try to make the distinction between gravity and what they call gravitation. Gravitation is, they still don't know. If you go read the Wikipedia.
Don't get hung up there. It's just a result of gravity. Don't go down that road. So we're talking the same thing.
Well, yes, but what I mean is what they call the theory of gravitation. It's just it's hilarious.
But Feynman said it was the mathematical form where you can't. We already discussed why you can't have mathematical scientific theories. It's like military intelligence or married bachelors. That you can't have those. That's why. Remember, we talked about this. That's the difference between laws, or what they call scientific laws. We're going to talk about that here specifically in a couple of episodes, because I challenged everyone with a scenario before on the recap. But there's a difference between scientific laws and scientific theories.
Oh yeah.
Laws describe the what or the is. Scientific theories explain the hows and the whys. So you can't have a mathematical scientific theory. It's preposterous.
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Now, what do you think about quantum gravity?
Quantum
Have you?
gravity?
That seems to be something that
You ain't
even has a
getting that
Wikipedia.
graviton's a fairy tale they conjured. You ain't getting quantum gravity.
Here, let me read this. It says, quantum gravity is a field of theoretical physics that seeks to describe gravity according to the principles of quantum mechanics, and where quantum effects cannot be ignored. The current understanding of gravity is based on Einstein, which is formulated within the framework of classical physics. On the other hand, the non-gravitational forces are described. Yeah, it's just going on and on and on and on and
I
on
think
here.
I seen an interview not too long ago with Freeman Dyson. Somebody asked him, they said, "So, what do you think of a graviton?" Uh, the analog to that is the photon with electromagnetic waves. He says, "What do you think about that? Is it a fiction?" Freeman Dyson sitting there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It seems that this is where we get near string theory and loop quantum gravity and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
causal theory of causal Fermion systems, and they're just digging and digging and digging and digging.
I got loop pink unicorn theory.
Yeah, and just superficially from a layman's point of view, I've said this before, but I think there's an elegance to it that seems to be lost on the more indoctrinated around us. What if just by any chance that there might be an up and down in nature, and that we just happen to experience this kind of like a law, like similar to like the law of thermodynamics in the sense of hot always flows to cold. That's a law, we know it. That's just
Sure.
the way this reality works.
Yeah,
Well,
you can never find the cause of that.
exactly,
It just is. It's a wonder.
exactly.
It's just an is.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, what if there really is just an up and down in nature? All of the things that the complications that arise by living on a sphere seems to have made all of these very strange extrapolations over the years. And I don't know. It's just I think it's interesting to see. We talk about Occam's razor. Everybody wants to talk about Occam's razor so much.
I don't think a lot of people know exactly what that is.
Yeah, especially today. There's
I
just
mean,
so much.
a lot of people say it. Oh, Occam's razor. I don't think they know what it means.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Um, but yeah, this is a huge topic. There isn't. The mainstream has zero answers on it. It seems they have all these ideas and mathematical extrapolations, but there doesn't seem to be an actual answer to the problem, even after all this time, 500 years.
Well, all I hear is people talking about Newtonian gravity, right? That's all I hear. All I hear is Newtonian gravity, Cavendish, Newtonian gravity. Folks, if somebody brings up Newtonian gravity, you have my permission to take this source right here. The scientific community, I'm just presuming that that's what they're following. The scientific community doesn't follow Newtonian gravity. It tells you right here.
Yeah, and the whole notion of mass attracting mass is rather,
Yeah, yeah.
as Newton put it.
I'd like to see one of these guys that I've been hearing on these YouTube videos come up against one of those Einsteinian followers. It get ugly quick.
Yeah, they're definitely very devout, those Einsteinian followers.
Yep. It gets ugly real quick between those two guys. I never hear. Yep. Maybe they bring it up off onto the side, like, well, they go through all the equations, Newton, Cavendish, all the equations, mass of the Earth from two lead balls, and then 3 minutes later, somebody mentioned, well, Einstein had his act together. Well, you just contradicted yourself. Because what is it? Is it Einsteinian gravity or Newtonian? That's what see. This is what I'm going to ask you guys. You know, I've been doing it. I've been doing it now for what? As long that this is one of the first things that came up when I got into this genre. These are still the first. They haven't changed. They're not going to change.
Yeah.
That when I first did it, I said, well, which one, Einsteinian or Newtonian? Well, why does it matter?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going. Time to clean the bathroom.
Yeah. So what is your take on the Cavendish experiment then? Considering that, I mean, you did bring up the electromagnetic force.
I'm questioning whether the gentleman even existed. I looked into it a little bit. I went to see, I pulled up his portraits. I wanted to see the guy. It was 1798, or the late 1700s. So I just wanted to see, well, what does this guy look like? I got like 10 different or not photos, but portraits. I said, which one is it?
Yeah.
And listen, I don't want to ad hominem this guy because I don't think he ever existed. I think the experiment is conjured, and I showed you why. I mean,
there are other factors that, I'd like to see. I really would. I'd like to see a Cavendish experiment done in a vacuum chamber with a Faraday cage around it.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about before. And listen, the electromagnetic force, that's only one potential confounding variable. That's not, what don't we know? See, it goes into a place where I don't want to go because it's all going to be speculation then. So
yeah.
I don't know, brother. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, man. There really is about all this. Modern scientism has tried to make it out that they know the answers, and that's just simply it. They always will count on that whole, well, if something better comes along, then we'll of course accept it. But that's after it fails peer review 100 times and takes 100 years to break status quo.
Yeah, but you're asking me about Cavendish, but the Cavendish experiment has to deal with the equations, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Newtonian gravity, right?
Yeah.
Talking about that. The scientific community doesn't follow that. Why am I even talking about Cavendish?
Well, but because of Cavendish, we can now know the mass of the Earth and know the mass of the Moon and the mass of Jupiter. I mean, hell, I could type it into Google right now. Here, let me see if
that's great. That's good. Well, I don't know. The scientific community train has left the building. They're still back in the docks with Cavendish.
Yeah, here I just looked it up. The mass of Jupiter, 1.898 times 10 to the 27th kilogram.
Well, that's good to know.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean they know that because of what Cavendish did.
Yeah. Yep, that's pretty impressive.
I wonder what the high priests of a civilization 2,000 years ago would have said if you asked them what the weight of one of the heavenly bodies were. They might be, channeled via the knowledge. They might have given you the same bit. I don't know. It just seems rather amazing that they could claim to know these things based off of this experiment.
Yeah. I don't know, brother. I don't know. I need to stick to one story. I'm tired of going down, chasing down, begging the question fallacies and straw man. I don't want to do it. Stick with one. You better stick with this one. You better stick with Einsteinian gravity. And of course, when you stick with that one, I'm gonna snatch the Louisville Slugger outside of the garage on that one also.
Yeah, I hear you.
Got some. I got it nail spiked. I'll just snatch that one up out of there, and we'll get to Einsteinian gravity. But I should never hear again this. I shouldn't hear this again because all I hear is, well, science is science that, science says this, science sings that. Well, this is what they're talking about. They're referencing science all the time. Well, there's your science. There it
Yeah.
is. It's saying Einstein, not Newton.
The warping of
So
space-time.
that's it. You gotta warp some space time, man.
But then quantum physics blows that out of the water.
Third graders blow that out of the water. I want you to bend some concepts for me.
And also think about the warping of space-time. Like, they do the visualization with like a hula hoop with like, a film on it or, some like nylon on it. And they put the larger ball in the center and then they'll shoot off a couple smaller marbles or whatever. Right. And they whirl around it and they're like, oh, see, that's what the orbits do. And that's because there's like a gravity well and this is the larger object is. But here's what's funny, they're demonstrating that there's an up and down in some regard to space with that experiment. So they're going to try to explain Einsteinian gravity with gravity of some kind.
So they're
It's
trying to explain
just,
gravity by using gravity.
yeah, it's kind of
That's called the
hilarious.
circular argument.
Absolutely.
And,
Which we're
and,
finding scientism has plenty of.
and they just by fiat, Einstein called it space time. Well, heck, I'll just call them turkey squirrels from now. I'll just start combining things.
Turkey squirrels, right?
Yeah, cat
Yeah,
crows.
yeah,
I'll just start
it's pretty
combining stuff and
hilarious.
see how that rolls.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But yeah. So what other presentations do we have coming up? I know you only got a couple more that we're gonna do this.
For this block. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
for next week. We'll go over evolution. That'll take about 2.5 minutes. Then we're going to talk about irreducible complexity and functional sequence complexity. I can't wait.
Yeah. I'm with that. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that's for next Monday.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think probably got like one, maybe two more episodes in this, we'll say season or block, however you want to put it. And
I didn't know we had seasons, man.
well, we'll be on the 10th episode next week, so might as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, this has been great so far. I've gotten a really good response from everybody out there concerning it, and I really appreciate everybody coming out and listening and being quite, well. Most of them have been quite nice and cordial in the in the chat. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this tonight?
I don't think I need to add anything, Cathexis.
No, I don't either. Did a great job. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and shut this down for tonight. I appreciate everybody coming out and have a great night.